music thing here. Oh, you can just highlight the whole thing. Okay. Hello, everyone. Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to my weekly behind-the-scenes DM-only live stream at Crafting Annihilation, which I build, write, and prepare for our next session of Tomb of Annihilation. If you're playing characters Mannix, Celeste, Gillian, George, or Theron, I hope you are not listening. Go away. This is not meant for you. But for the rest of you, welcome. We stream our Tomb of Annihilation sessions live on YouTube every Friday evening. You can watch all of our D&D live series as well as reviews and Let's Plays on my YouTube page and read weekly session recaps at roguewatson.com. You can follow me on Twitter at roguewatson and join our official Discord discussion group with invite link in the description below. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out patreon.com/roguewatson. Shoutouts to platinum patrons Andrew, Richard, Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Nick, Andy, and Chris. And gold patrons RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy Numa, Marcos De Vicente, Gilberto Shane, Cert to be Adam, Deathers Lounge, Sam, Ross, Olympus Buds, and Jerome. Thank you all very much for your support. For our campaign, we use Roll20.net for streaming. I use Open Broadcaster software with Streamlabs. I apologize for the late start. I don't know what was happening, but it was giving me an error I'd never gotten before when I just tried to go live and basically just said, hey, check your internet connection. You can't go live. And I tried to tell it, my internet connection is fine. What are you talking about? So I restarted things, unplugged, plugged things back in, and that seemed to fix things as often does. Computers are weird and yet wonderful because they allow us to play D&D online. Hope everybody is staying safe and healthy. Kind of obligatory to mention the global pandemic we're all in that we're trying to get through. And since we play on Roll20, our current schedule and my personal schedule for videos and everything is largely unaffected, so that's one positive, I suppose. All right, let's get into talking Tomb of the Nine Gods. I'm actually going to go back to level 1 then. Hello, Numo Infernus. I'm glad you discovered the channel. Welcome. So we actually finished up level 1. Yeah, can we joke about that yet? Is it? Are we making jokes about COVID-19? Is that possible? I don't know. I think we have to joke. That's kind of like the age we're in. You have to immediately make jokes about everything because otherwise it's just despair. It's too much. So we ended with Wongo's Tomb last session. I always do like kind of a recap at the beginning of these. Hopefully it won't take too long, but I really like talking about the tombs. I think it's really cool. I did get my surprise round off with the mummy. His Mace of Terror, all 3 of the players made the save, including Mannix, I believe, having to use a point of inspiration to make the save. So that was a little disappointing because that could have changed the dynamics of the fight. However, it immediately followed that up with the mummy critting Mannix and immediately downing him, which you really can't ask for a better surprise round when it comes to like starting a cool combat scene. Like one of your party members already goes down. So that was a really cool start to this fight. We can discuss a little bit about how you think the mummy curse should have applied here, because I was reading the fine print, and I really didn't read this before. This was my bad completely. Hey, Eric wasn't prepared for something. What a shock. But as I read it, at first I thought it was, well, here's the problem. If somebody goes down, but can they also be affected by the mummy rot curse? And I kind of went back and forth with it and ultimately decided that yes, because he's still conscious, he's just bleeding out. So he was affected by the mummy rot curse. However, the problem with that is you can't regain hit points, which means if you're down, I guess I could have ruled that they could have still stabilized him. They could have stabilized him, but literally he would have been unconscious, at 0 hit points for until removed by a remove curse spell or other magic. And Theron did have access to like greater restoration. So the tricky thing is, and if you're asking if you were prepared to kill Mannix here, yes. The bummer is this was literally the opening scene of the session. So I think normally when you lose a player, you can probably look towards like maybe ending a session early, as a lot of contingency plans. But literally when the opening scene is your character going down, that kind of puts an interesting twist on it. Now, I did really like that Mannix had a scroll of remove curse, it rolled out of his body. Somebody could jump down there and grab it. But then we read the fine print about how the rules for using spell scrolls work, and that is you have to be able to cast that spell normally, which actually limits the usefulness of spell scrolls quite a bit, especially if you have a more like martial focused party than a magic using party. So I made an on the fly rule that you could roll a DC 15 Arcana check to basically get over that hump, to where you can just use whatever arcane knowledge you have to decipher a spell. And that was not something we'd ever discussed. That was not a house rule that we have. That was literally just a spur of the moment, like, hey, let me get a chance to basically get this player back up so they can heal him. I don't remember if Theron still had a greater restoration available or not. And keep in mind, Theron was still down here and not really in good shape to heal anybody, which that would have forced him up there. Now, she still had to make that check. So had she failed that, she would not have been able to use the spell scroll, and then that would have forced somebody like Theron to then come up and use something. So there was a lot of contingencies in place to try and get the party out of this. I was trying to give them, throw them some options, basically, instead of just downing him and saying, well, too bad, you can't read the spell scroll, so you're fucked. That just doesn't seem as fun as giving players at least more opportunities. Now, they still have to make those checks, those rolls. But that just seems more in spirit of what we're doing. So, we can have a discussion about that, like if I made things too easy or whatever your thoughts are about that. But I still stand by that was the best course of action. And the fact that they had the spell scroll, I like the way role played where the spell scroll like rolls out of his body and she sees it. And I just liked the dynamic and the story that built. And ultimately, I think that's really the best thing. The rules should serve the story. So that's how I feel about that. I liked that fight quite a bit. The mummy obviously wasn't designed to last very long, especially with, Kaleska jump down there and deal some damage, and this summoned earth elemental that Theron can do, which I really loved the way, at least the first time it failed to hold the adamantine blade. That's a DC 20 strength check, by the way, but it did it on the second time, which was cool, and it just went up there and critted. In fact, you can see the attack right here. Critted the mummy, just pulverized it in the face, so that was kind of fun. So ultimately, that was a neat little combat encounter. I like the way they dealt with the wind blade by having the earth elemental. In fact, in the description of the recap, I literally put like a conjured earth elemental really like helps them every step of the way, because it really did. Like, it helped them in that combat situation. It helped get them out of the wind tunnel. And then in level 2, it helped them basically solve the entire false tomb floor. So now we're going to finally, so that puts a bow on level 1. Mannix got, or no, it was Kales, sorry. Mannix was unconscious, so I think he might have ended up with the mace. But because he was knocked out, Kales went over, grabbed it to give it to him, and then she was possessed by Wongo's spirit. So she got the Mace of Terror, which interestingly is not that good of a weapon, but does have a good effect, which is an AoE fear ability. And then Wongo's ability, which is it's an at-will, like, range psychic attack, which, oddly enough, she seemed kind of disappointed by that, but I thought it was just as a good ranged option. It's kind of a neat ability, although probably not as sexy to her as, say, like invisibility at will, or the spider climbing one, I think is really cool too, which Mannix later got. So for level 2, they saw the plaque, which I immediately showed them, because I think that's a really cool aspect of this dungeon, is getting these riddles and learning all the different clues and how they apply to different rooms. I think that's really fun, and kind of adds to the fact that Acererak is oddly, like, yes, he constructs a death trap dungeon, but also gives everybody like clues and hints on how to solve the problem. So he wants them to, and that's how I framed it with like Withers at the beginning, is like everybody wants the players to get as far as possible and then to finally succumb at the end, which is really a weird dynamic to even have for a dungeon crawl. Like, they want it's like playing a video game where you're the dungeon keeper, but you get like more points if the players make it as far as possible. So that's how I framed it with Withers at the beginning, telling the players like, oh, we, enjoy your stay and we hope you make it, as far, but ultimately die. The Green Devil face, they saw the room below. They decided to nope right out of it because, correctly assuming that that floor would have its own clues attached to it, and they are correct about that. So, and jumping in from this angle is not a good idea, because you have to step on the tiles in the correct way. And if you try and either open or move the tomb, try to cheat the whole room, then this big, like, glass wall or a force wall comes up and traps you. So it's just a bad idea in general to do it. And they correctly kind of noped out of there. They also noped out of the gravity ring tunnel. Oh, we forgot to discuss. I was assuming the players would long rest after Wongo's tomb because they were really fucking low. I mean, Mannix got basically killed, which I did have him forget to roll his lingering injury save. I literally put that in the chat, if you can see right here. Reminder that Mannix needs to roll a con save for lasting injury. Nobody in the chat called it, or if they did, they missed it. I missed it too. Just totally forgot that, but he will most likely, unless he rolls really well in his con save, will be saddled with a lasting injury. But they didn't long rest, which shocked me because a lot of my planning stuff was I did have rules to basically terrorize them during their next long rest and to even ambush them with some tomb dwarves and withers at that Windblade tunnel because I assumed they would long rest in Wongo's tomb. They didn't do that at all. In fact, they didn't even short rest from what I remember. So it's really crazy how far they're pushing themselves. I hope they don't think that they need to go this far on a single rest because at this point they're definitely due. I think they finally realized that once they got down to here that they can try to long rest. But now I've got to try to come up with battle plans for all these different rooms, like how well can, Withers and the Tomb Dwarves reach each room, and what would they do to try to ambush them? Or even if they would, do I really feel like ambushing them at this point, or do I want to save it for a more, exposed room? I assume they're only going to long rest maybe 2 or 3 times total in the dungeon. And, if we're coming up on one about midway through level 2, that's probably pretty good. Sun just came out, so maybe I can adjust my camera slightly. That would probably be pretty good timing, but I don't know how much I don't want to abuse that too much. I don't want to throw extra fights, but I feel like there should be at least one fight where Withers shows up with a bunch of Tomb Dwarves and just kind of fucks with them, basically. And I also definitely want to jack with them with the Sohn Sisters, although I'm of two minds of that. I'm tempted. I've talked about this, about making Withers kind of the overarching controlling mini boss for the first couple levels, and then you've got the Beholder for level 3, and then make the Sohn Sisters more of a presence when they get deeper, maybe even if they defeat Withers. But on the other hand, having the Sohn Sisters jack with them while they sleep is pretty much what the hags do. Like, that's their main ability, is that nightmare haunting. So I do like somebody on, I think it was the DM. Did you tell me that? If you're in here, told me some really fun rules that they used for the Sohn Sisters nightmare haunting, which is each of the 3, and I really like this, each of the 3 sisters has a different save associated with them. So depending on which one ends up haunting them at one time, it's either a charisma save or intelligence save, whatever. And then everybody who's sleeping, which would be everybody in and this would be a long rest only, makes a save, and the person who rolled the lowest is affected by the nightmare haunting. I'm still not 100% sure I want to literally tell them you don't get the benefits of a long rest, because that fucks up some classes way worse than others. If that happens to Gillian, like, she is so screwed if she doesn't get the benefits of a long rest. Whereas if that happens to George, oh well, he just doesn't get some of his hit points, but he still has a lot of his abilities and prowess. So that gets a little unbalancing that I'm not really a fan of, because some the spellcasters need that long rest. What I do like is reducing the hit points, and possibly even exhaustion, or maybe losing a hit die, something around there. Maybe you don't get all of your hit dice back, so I'll let them get some benefits of a long rest, but also give them some kind of penalty. I like the hit point reduction and maybe one other, and that would just affect like one person out of the 5 of them per nightmare haunting. Now, does Leomund's tiny hut prevent a nightmare haunting? I'm not sure. I don't know if it blocks the ethereal plane or not. But in any case, Withers can just dispel the fuck out of it, and that's something he would totally do. And if they have somebody on watch, they would still see it get dispelled, and then Gillian would have to recast it. Now, I could rule that if they want Gillian to just constantly recast it every, 2 hours or whatever it would take, then she could do that, and that might prevent the nightmare haunting. but then she would definitely not get the benefits of a long rest in that case. So that would be the other consequence. Maybe I'm too nice. I don't know. It's the Tomb of the Nine Gods. It's going to be pretty brutal on its own. I'm going to catch up on the chat for a second. So, Arcana or religion checks. Yep. Spell scroll mishap table on a failed check. Ooh, I don't know about that one. Is that from one of the books? Fun does trump rules, yes. It's not fun to kill a whole party outright. I wouldn't think so. I've never done that. They die of their own accord. Yeah, I mean, the goal is always, I don't want to just prevent death. But you definitely want it to mean something. I think it's a hugely wasted opportunity and hugely disappointing for everyone involved if it's just a stupid, meaningless death. That's not what we're about. But if it's a really cool, heroic death, or just a really nasty, like, man, we were in over our head, and, it was just a really powerful monster, and maybe everybody else gets to flee, or other people get to avenge you. The idea is you want it to be this big, nice, huge scenario, and, getting critted by a mummy because you opened the sarcophagus, that was pretty close to it. But the other players were there to save him, so... Both of my groups never got a long rest in the tomb. Oh my gosh. That's crazy. I do hope they check all the rooms too. Yeah. I mean, they noped out of the I forgot to mention that. They noped out of the gravity ring. I guess I'm still covering the recap, aren't I? Which is good because that's a very pain in the ass location. They see the body here. I actually, if you notice, if you watch the stream, I created literally like print screen, copy, paste, all that, to where it was like a hidden intersection that they found. Excuse me. And then they found the body here. This is a tricky thing to show in Roll20, obviously, because it just looks like hallways, but the whole thing actually bends around. And they didn't decide to explore it at all because they found a dead body in there, which is pretty much good to just nope out of it. Which my solution was to have it be the ethereal realm. And then if they hung around there too long or basically tried to explore too much, I would have them attacked by a bunch of phase spiders that the night hags were like, I don't know, breeding in the ethereal realm or something. But instead, they skipped it, which is fine because I don't like that area. And they checked out the false tomb, which this was a weird thing. And somebody brought this up in the Discord chat, which was, well, what did they actually dispel? Because they did use dispel magic on the sarcophagus because Mannix was able to detect magic on both the sarcophagus and the light. And the answer is, I don't fucking know, because it just mentioned that there was abjuration magic on the sarcophagus and illusion was the sunlight. But that you have to dispel the sunlight because the clue was the dead abhor sunlight. So you have to dispel the sunlight in order to dispel the entire trap. They didn't do that. They specifically cast it on the sarcophagus. I don't know what the fuck that abjuration magic on the sarcophagus is supposed to be, though. Like, I went back and looked at it and I was like, oh yeah, I have no idea. So I don't know. It just says casting dispel magic on the illusory sunlight dispels it and prevents the trap from triggering. But it doesn't say what the coffin... It says the coffin is stuck to the floor with sovereign glue and has a hinged lid. So maybe the dispel magic would let you move the sarcophagus for some reason. So I don't know. It's kind of a red herring, which is really odd. But they set off the trap. They were all very cautious, and they literally stood outside of the door so that when the trap went off, they were all able to flee. And this was a really interesting situation for me as the DM, and a good exercise in when to like hand wave stuff, because the players weren't technically involved in the room at all, but they had a conjured earth elemental inside, although it did like Mannix, like throwing his kind of remote seeing eyeball so they could actually see through it, because Theron can control the earth elemental, but doesn't actually can't possess it. So it was a really weird case of them being able to hear things, but Mannix could see out of his eyeball and they could see all these things. And I just kind of described everything happening because I couldn't just ignore the room completely because they still were outside of it and had somebody inside. But there was no way in hell I was going to go through actual straight up roll initiative combat when it was literally an NPC summoned by one player against a bunch of creatures. So I hand waved, montaged all of that. I said the earth elemental comes out on top, loses about maybe 50-60% of its hit points. And then when the thing opened back up, that whole wine actually comes down. And I was going to use the tidal wave spell because it doesn't say anything about what happens if people are in the hallway, but it does mention all of this wine that was in the room does flow out down the staircase. So I was like, well, if they're all standing in the hallway, they're all going to get hit by this giant like flow of wine coming in. Then it's kind of like being in a, I don't know, I'm picturing like the Poseidon Adventure or some situation where, you know, you open a hatch and just water spilling out. But they use the Earth Elemental to brace some of the water, which was cool. I had him lose some more hit points. And then I had everybody roll a dex save, and I think everybody pretty much made it. So it like halved it and then halved again. So it was very little damage. So they made it out of this entire situation with basically almost nothing because of the Earth Elemental was able to be the one to actually open the sarcophagus and deal with all the threats and things inside. So that thing was probably honestly the MVP of the session, but really that meant that Theron was the MVP. They did explore all of the gargoyle heads. And instead of, you know, having them just use their tokens and roll around, I just kind of described, hey, one of them you saw does have a crawl space in there, and you can go check that out. And the crawl space went to Nang Nang's tomb. Now, dear watchers, your DM was not prepared to have them get this far in level 2. So to recap, already, they did not long rest, which I thought they would, which meant we did not have that ambush tomb dwarf encounter, which I thought we would have, that would take up time. They did not go down to level 3, which I was prepared for, but they didn't do. And they did not go into the gravity ring, which could have been another combat encounter. And I had to montage past the combat encounter in the false tomb because they weren't really in there for that one either. So that means we're getting through this areas a lot quicker than I anticipated, which that's part of DMing this whole dungeon, I think, is dealing with the interesting ways the players have of solving all of these issues. And I am, you know, trying to prep what I can, but dear watchers, I had 0 notes planned for Nang Nang's tomb, 0. Those of you that are platinum patrons have access to my Google Docs of notes, and literally the entire section for Nang Nang's tomb was blank because I didn't think the players would make it this far because of all the things that are in between all of these tombs. I figured there would be some combat sessions and everything else because, you know, you can only prep so much. So we made it to Nang Nang's tomb, and I was not prepared. I had to quickly flip through the book. I'm sure you can go back and see me slightly panicking a little bit with whenever they get here and start dealing with it, because I'm trying to figure out, okay, what do slaads do? What's the whole thing about the slaad? I'm trying to remember because, you know, obviously I've read everything the first time, but I'm trying to recall like specific, you know, because there's a lot of details about each room and how these things work. So part of it is me trying to recall this important information. And one of those is like, okay, would the slaad talk to them? Like, is this a role-playing scene or is it a combat scene or what's going on? And from what I can tell from the book, it is definitely a combat scene, but it does mention that if it gets into a fight, it says, hungry for carnage, the creature vents its rage on the characters before leaving the room in search of its control gem, not knowing that it's kept in Area 28. So that's the clue about the jewel can tame the frog. The fact that the players can actually find that jewel, which is a control gem for the slaad, in Withers' office, which would be a huge find. And the cool thing is I was able to escape with the slaad because it has at-will invisibility. What a cool fucking creature the slaad is, by the way. It's got at-will invisibility, which is just amazing for any DM monster, that you can literally just poof and disappear and you're gone. Like, that's incredible. And it can cast Fireball, and it's pretty got great armor class, good hit points. It's got multi-attack. Like, it can fly, it can fear. What just an amazing creature. Like, honestly, just thumbs up to the slaad. Just it can fucking do it all. Like, just absolutely great. It's CR9. It's got telepathy, so it can talk to everybody. It's got damage resistance to all the elemental effects. My goodness, what a cool ass creature. Like, I was really just beaming when I was looking over its stats and everything it can do. Like, holy crap, I can't believe I've never used this thing before. Great slaad, everybody. Totally recommend them. But George had that ability to see invisible. But of course, George is George, so he instead of being, the cautious, like, okay, let's plan this out, he's like, no, I'm gonna, do the Predator thing of slashing across his chest and walk in there and duel this creature, which is awesome. And then Gales came up and used her Mace of Terror on, and this was interesting. The players have done such an amazing job of role-playing all of their trickster gods. I've been so delighted and impressed by it, because that's one of those things that could be just completely ignored by players if they don't want to engage with it and just use the min-max of, okay, I've got these extra powers. But instead, my players have gone so far to the extreme. I did forget about regeneration. Thank you. I don't even know if they came up. Did they even scratch the poor thing? Okay, it did get hit a little bit. My bad. So I guess it would have actually regenerated. Let's see. Is it 10 hit points a turn? Yeah, so it's actually got probably 20 more hit points, which is fantastic. Although, frankly, next time they face this, we're going to be full health again. But I have been delighted with the way the players have been role-playing all of their trickster gods. It's to where so far to the extreme where I have to almost tell the players, hey, if you want to try to fight back against the about how your trickster gods are changing your personality, then you can give me a charisma saving throw, because I feel bad for especially Theron, who really changed his entire combat style because he's got the nervous, skittish Obolaka inside. So he would normally shapeshift into something fearsome and charge in there. Instead, he's back in the corner throwing his sling, and it's kind of pitiful. But on the other hand, I've been very impressed with how he's been role playing it. I don't necessarily want to stop him from doing that, because I think that's really, really cool. And then, of course, Gales is now going to be more aggressive and charging in there. And I had her, Wongo wouldn't give a shit about targeting everybody else with the Mace of Terror, but especially would hate George, who is possessed by Moa, because they're rival gods. So I had her roll a save just to try to not target George, who's her ally. She failed to save, and so she does target George. Poor George runs into the crawl space, runs into Gillian. This whole fight was just a hilarious comedy of errors, as the players did just about everything wrong, making the Grey Slaad even more powerful than usual, which is really kind of funny. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the sequence quite a bit. But the Slaad certainly wasn't going to fight to the death. It's a fairly intelligent creature. It sees that there's actually 5 people around it. They all seem capable of, hurling spells and things at it, even though it's got magic resistance too, which is incredible. And as it mentions in the text, it actually tries to escape because Gales specifically smudges out the chalk so it can escape. And that was a cool way for me to show off the secret door. Although I'm sure the players would have found that anyway, because they do a pretty good job of entering every single room, rolling a perception check, and trying to find if there's another door somewhere. But that was a fun way for me to show that, hey, there's a secret door here, because otherwise, I'm pretty sure the Slaad's not escaping through this crawl space with both Gillian and George in here. Oh, poor George just got scared that whole fight. He ran in there so cool and then got feared and could not escape from the fear at all. I should keep that in mind and have the Slaad cast fear, honestly, because that would actually probably work pretty well against George and Gales, who are 2 of my biggest threats in combat, and have them go away. So now I've got a fun situation where I've got this Grey Slaad running around, and I don't know what to do with it, but I think that would be a really neat way to either introduce a combat scenario, or especially if the party gets split up at some point, you can have the Slaad appear and really fucking tear somebody apart. Or I'll have to look up more information about this, but if the players acquire the control gem, that could create an interesting situation where the Slaad maybe tries to attack somebody who's got the gem, and they have to figure out that it's used in that way or something. So that, I think that's going to add a really fun dynamic to the campaign that I hopefully will enjoy keeping track of and can follow up with not too much later, because I don't want the players to forget about it. But I think that's a neat thing to have that creature running around. I think that's a neat tool for the DM. Anytime you get to use a villain or monster, show them off, and then have them withdraw for whatever reason, and then the players just have to either as a proof to how strong this monster is, or as a way to hunt the players down later. That's something I've tried to use actually several times in this campaign. I did that with the Red Dragon during the pirate ship, where the dragon came down and destroyed their ship. And obviously with the Steel Predator, where it was hunting them throughout the jungle and kind of scared them during that one fight before they met Valindra. So I definitely like using that tactic quite a bit as a DM. So now we can finally get to prep work. And then Manix got the Pappas O'Toole's, I believe it was Pappas O'Toole, right? No, it's Nang Nang, obviously, we're in that Nang Nang's tomb. which is a Pearl of Power, which does him literally... Well, actually, it does do him good. He's part wizard. So it does help him. The resistance to poison doesn't help him because he's already a Yuan Ti because he went through the transformation. It does mention then that Potion of Supreme Healing is actually a Potion of Poison in disguise. I don't like that, and we talked about this a little bit in the Discord channel. I don't know. I swear there's rules for like identifying potions, but that always seems weird to me that I think most adventurers would be able to identify potions very, very easily. I guess maybe if it had like a actual spell cast on it, but even then, how would you make it last that long? I don't know. That whole thing seems weird. I would feel like players, for the most part, would be able to identify them. I did do that once in a one-shot. If you watched our Den of the Rotten Kings one-shot from years ago, I had a whole situation where, and I think this is actually written in that one-shot adventure, where the players got a bunch of potions, but some of them were potions of poison and some were potions of healing, and the trick was they didn't know which was which, so it was a kind of a risk-reward thing. And I think that was kind of a fun deal because you know ahead of time, like, do you risk drinking the potion or not? But here it just seems kind of just a random cruel fuck you to give them this really awesome healing potion. They're like, oh, it turns out it's a potion of poison. But I feel like most players would identify that, and I don't know, that's just going to make them paranoid about potions from then on. I'm tempted to just kind of ignore that, not keep track. And plus, they're probably going to have multiple potions. Like, okay, which one are you drinking? I was at the poison potion one. So, I don't know. I think I'm just going to let them have the Potion of Supreme Healing in there. Maybe the only thing I would do is when they drink the potion, maybe give them, like, say something like, because of the way it was stored or something, like it still has the restorative effects, but you also maybe have to roll a con save or maybe have the poisoned condition. So you still get the benefits of the heal, but you get the poisoned condition, which is pretty bad because it's disadvantage on everything until you have like a lesser restoration cast on you. So that would be the only thing that I would see as kind of a compromise for dealing with that. I'm going to catch up on the chat again. In the DMG. Okay, I'll need to check on that. Scroll mishap table. I totally didn't... DMG is one of those things that everybody needs to like reread, including me. Airtight, no wind. Oh, interesting. Oh no, he drowned. Prep the entire level and part of the next level for each section. Yeah. I think, isn't Dungeon of the Mad Mage a little less interconnected, though? Isn't it fair? It's been a while since I looked at it, but I thought it was pretty linear in terms of there's like one entrance and exit to each level, and generally you kind of do most of a level before you get to the next one. This one is just because you literally have a spiral staircase in the middle, a grand staircase in the middle, a spiral staircase on another side, and there's several points where you can drop level to level. So like there are tons of ways to go from, say, level 1 to level 5, which is nuts. Plan for the opposite of that. Yep. Slaad invasion. Nice. I do have great players. I agree, Arno. What if the party finds the control gem, then the slaad talks with them telepathically to exchange his gem for his help? But he just wants it so he can't be controlled, should not be trusted. Yeah, that's very nice. That's very nice. Players wouldn't even know that, like, obviously you can't make a deal with that slaad. And the players are kind of anti-hero enough to where they would just straight up control this creature. I don't know how that all works, by the way. I have to look all of that up. I've never used a slaad before in any of our campaigns. I don't know if the control gem is an actual magic item or how that works. I just know that it's in Withers' office. It's one of the things they can find. All right, so what we've got coming up, surely they've got to be due for a rest at this point. Like, everybody is at 50% hit points or fewer. I think my spellcasters are finally running low on spells, or at least Gillian is, from what I believe she was. Wow, she's out of everything but first level spell slots. Theron, I feel like, never casts spells. Does he still have some? He's used some, I guess. Yeah, they still have some spell slots. Mainly their hit points are an issue right now. Surely they would get a short rest in here, though. I mean, come on, players. Like, I would not begrudge them a long rest, honestly. And at this point, this isn't even a good area for Withers to ambush them either. So if they wanted to actually long rest in here, I would probably just let them God, would you ambush in the room with a slaad just to escape? Oh, yeah, probably would, because the slaad doesn't want to go back there. If they long rest in here, I think I would just let them. But I would do the nightmare haunting thing. I would definitely do the Sown Sisters nightmare haunting. That would definitely be a part of all of their long rests for sure. But in terms of Withers actually ambushing them with like a full contingent of forces, even though they skipped a lot of combat so far, I'm not feeling it in this room very well. I don't know. I don't know what it is. The other room felt more like an ambush room to me, but this one just feels such like a random like corner. There's secret doors in here. Just seems like a weird spot. What we're about to come up to is the Bottle Genie, which I'm looking forward to because that is a potentially very powerful NPC that the party can acquire. I believe it is literally just a kind of a classic genie bottle situation. Let's see. I'm actually going to pull it up on Roll20 so you guys can read with me. What's funny is I'd prepped the whole Pappas O'Toole's tomb thinking they would go down there first and then go across into Nang Nang's tomb, but instead they went east and then south, and now they're going to go west. So again, that leads credence to the fact that don't whatever you expect your players to do, they're not going to do it. Dungeon of Deception. All right, so we are on room. I'm going to pop you out, Mr. Dow, or Miss Dow, I guess. Token looks female. 23 is the genie. 10,000 years. Give you such a crick in the neck. A Dow named Keshma al-Wazir, who was trapped centuries ago by a Sarek, and even examining the bottle, spots the genie waving from within and hears her muffled voice calling out. Keshma speaks Terran only, which we determined is primordial. It's like a different dialect of primordial, so I think Gillian can speak that, because I think she can speak aquatic or whatever I don't know. But anyway, it can cast the tongue spell, so it can deal with that. At first, she orders the characters to release her. If they refuse, she tries to bargain with them. While trapped inside the bottle, she can't attack or cast spells. Once she's released, she can cast the tongue spell to better communicate with her liberators. The bottle is broken or unplugged. The Dow emerges in a whirlwind of sand. She fulfills whatever promise she made to the characters in exchange for her freedom, then casts plane shift in an effort to return to the elemental plane of Earth. However, the attempt fails, and she winds up in area number 57, the Oubliette. Moa advises host not to make any bargains with the Dow. Greedy Nang Nang advises his host. Oh, her host. Nang Nang is female. Her host to cut deals with the Dow that benefit only the host and her. Proud Pappas O'Toole encourages his host to treat the Dow like a servile lickspittle. They don't have Pappas O'Toole yet. 4 of my 5 players have Trickster Gaz so far. So she's got an imperious nature. She promises riches first in exchange for her freedom. But what the players can do, and I'm hoping what they do, is they basically try and get a 3 wishes thing going. And I would, instead of using that as the literal wish spell, I would have it, okay, you can gain her as a ally 3 times. Now that can mean all kinds of things. That can mean everything from, hey, come help us in combat. It basically is 3 wishes, but without a literal wish spell involved. It's like, help them out in combat, or help them, solve some puzzle, or we need you to cast a spell because she is possible of casting gaseous form and invisibility and conjuring an earth elemental. She can use pass wall and move earth, but I'm pretty sure it says the tomb is immune to that. You can't change the tomb's. Yeah, the spell does not allow passes through surfaces or doors in the tomb, but she doesn't know that. So they could try to cast that, and she would fail and not know why. So she's got a bunch of spells. Obviously, she's got her attack. She could just be a combatant. She's a CR 11. So she could help out at any one time. So it's a really cool reward, and also could just be a fun role-playing tool for me as I get to roll. I had a lot of fun role-playing the genie in Prince of the Apocalypse, too. And I think it's a cool thing to have in the dungeon. They can have basically a genie bottle you can rub, and then it appears. I don't think it would know any information. Says, oh geez, once freed, Kashima remains true to her word. However, she won't tolerate any slight to her honor. If she feels insulted, she attacks the characters and attempts to enslave them. Holy shit! Might have to make that very clear to the players that you do have to treat her nicely. The characters press for more. Catch promise take them anywhere in the multiverse. That doesn't work, obviously. It's time to travel with them through the tomb and aid them 3 times with their spells. That's the one I actually want to encourage first, because I think that's the most fun thing to do, is to give the players basically a finite tool that they can use with any of their scenarios throughout the tomb. And hopefully they'll do a cool thing where they like save that final help for like the final battle, because obviously she could help out a lot. So that's a cool thing to have, I think. So they'll find her, they can gain her as a very powerful ally, and then go to Pappas O'Toole's tomb. And it was here that I was going to have the skeleton key, which is right here, which, since they're entering from this side, I'm going to move it over here to one of these far. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and put it on the actual map layer. So they'll enter this room. This one is a cool scenario where essentially as soon as the players jack with anything, it summons a bunch of skeletons, 2 per cauldron. There are 6 cauldrons, so immediately 12 skeletons. Now, skeletons obviously are like level 1 fodder. They're super easy, and they should be, but the idea is there's just hordes of them. There's hordes of skeletons. And every round on the skeleton's turn, another skeleton emerges from a cauldron. And the only way to stop it is, A, you either systematically destroy all the cauldrons, which they do have, like hit points, armor class, and all that, or you have to bow before no one, which is one of the statues at the bottom here is faceless, and you have to bow before that one. Which, since they're entering from that side, I think I'm going to put it as maybe one of the statues over. I think this X is supposed to determine which one is the faceless one. I think I'm going to go with like this one, make them go a little further for that. There's also a shield here at the bottom that animates, and there's like a dude with a spear, and he shoots the spear at them with a +10 to hit that deals 48 force damage. And for whatever stupid reason, and I literally have it as a token down here so I can roll for initiative because it happens on initiative 20, which means it's basically a layer action. If you die from that, you're disintegrated and turned to dust. I have no idea why. It doesn't seem like it's that impressive or cool to have the ability to do that. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to ignore that part of it, because all these insta-gibs, I mean, some of them make sense. Like if this giant stone thing comes down and you're not able to get out from under it, it makes sense that those kind of things like pulverize you and there's nothing to come back from. That I understand. If you fall into a bunch of acid or something, you just dissolve. Like, I get that stuff. But this random like animated spear shield that hits you and does force damage that can disintegrate you into nothing, that doesn't sit well with me. So it also, if I'm reading this correctly for this room, it says that if you bow, that stops the skeletons, but it doesn't say that if you bow before you jack with anything, that prevents the skeletons from spawning. So that's different from the way that the mask one worked in Obolaka's tomb, which is if you wear the masks, that prevents the whole thing from happening. If I'm reading this correctly, which it says, disturbing the chariot, the sarcophagus, or the treasures lying atop it causes the skeletons to start spawning, disgorges a skeleton every round until the cauldron is destroyed or the tomb is empty. You can destroy the cauldrons. AC 15, 22 hit points. And then the bronze shield animate. What does it say? To stop? No, it doesn't even say. Okay, there it goes. As does bowing before the faceless statue, bow before no one. That does stop the flow of skeletons. It doesn't say that if you do that first, it magically turns off the trap. So that's an interesting caveat. So the trap looks like it gets activated no matter what. But you have to then bow before. So in combat, which is cool, you have to basically spend your turn like running over there and then bowing before the statue. But as soon as somebody does it, Again, if I'm interpreting this correctly, that stops the skeletons. However, it does say that animated spear shield, again, that plus 10 to hit, 48 force damage, you can either blind the shield by putting something over it. You can turn the shield to face a wall. I guess you can just manipulate it. It's just hanging there. Or you can destroy it, except it's immune to everything with force damage. But I think it says it only attacks people that haven't bowed. Let's see, the bronze shield. Okay, it flings a magical spear of force to the nearest creature it can see, ignoring any creature that is bowed before the faceless bronze statue. So if you bow, that only the character who bowed does not get attacked by the animated shield, but the skeletons still spawn. So you would have to know, I don't know if this is very intuitive or not. So even if somebody reads it correctly, they say, okay, bow before no one. I'm going to, if somebody walks in there and immediately doesn't touch anything and bows before the statue, and then they touch something, and then that makes everything spawn, that player's going to think, oh, I didn't do it right or something. Are they going to know they have to then bow again once the trap has actually been triggered? Because that would then stop the skeletons from... So I think it only stops the skeletons from spawning. It doesn't actually kill the skeletons that are currently active either. It just says that stops the flow of skeletons. And I would probably argue that those skeletons would not target the person who actually bowed either. So the player's going to have to figure out that everybody has to bow, and one person has to bow once the trap is triggered. Or they're going to forget all of that and just turn it into a regular combat encounter, which is totally fine. We'll see. But that, from what I understand, those are the rules for this room. So you have to know once the trap is triggered, there doesn't seem to be a way to prevent that, immediately bow before the... So the best case scenario, every single character bows, because that basically turns off the shield trap. And then once the trap is triggered, somebody bows again, and that turns off the skeletons from flowing, but it seems like you always have to fight that initial burst of skeletons that pop out of the cauldron. So that would be interesting. If the players were ever confused, I could use either Orvex, which, by the way, fun fact, I totally forgot to put Orvex on this map whenever they transitioned to level 2. We all forgot. I blame all of you that watch the show, too. You totally forgot to tell me about Orvex. I forgot about Orvex. We all forgot about poor Orvex. He's still lingering back there in the back parts of the tomb. But I don't know where I'll put him. Put him back behind George, so they remember. I mean, probably would have bumped into Orvex at that point, too, right at the entrance here. So I'll remember to put him there. For Orvex. Or they could use the Trickster Gods. The Trickster Gods might be able to explain. I don't want to be too proactive about it and use the Trickster Gods to just solve every puzzle for the players, but if the players ever got confused about something, then perhaps some of their fellow Trickster Gods would be able to kind of explain, or at least break down a room for them, especially once it's happened and if they're really confused by it. But in the end, it can also just be a combat encounter. They would just have to know to target the cauldrons and do all that. So maybe they'll enjoy that. We will see, but it looks like it's going to be a traditional fight regardless. Pappas O'Toole provides an Amulet of Health, which is probably, I assume Gillian's going to want to grab this one because she's the only one without a Trickster God, as well as a bunch of treasures. Pappas O'Toole is shrewd and conniving. I bow before no one and expect others to do as I command. That's amazing for Gillian. Holy crap. A couple of these are just extensions of their own personality. That is hilarious. I mean, Mannix is selfish and cruel with Nang Nang. George cannot tell a lie. That one's probably the most different. And Theron's Obalaka. But Kales getting violent and deranged for Wongo is pretty close. God, Gillian getting Pappas O'Toole will be amazing. And the ability is you cannot be surprised, you gain advantage on all wisdom checks, and you never take damage from falling. That could come in real handy in the tomb. So none of those are abilities, but they're just kind of cool. Kind of like Manix's, where he can now like walk on walls and ceilings and stuff. So all these abilities are really fun and cool. He was sampling the wine in the vats. He was back there just loving it. Him and the Earth Elemental just toasting it up. Ah, that would be a great one for Gillian. What is the Amulet of Health? I think she would have to give something up, though. We're finally getting to the point, at this point in the campaign, which is pretty late in the campaign, where players have all are full of attuned items, so they have to start making those choices. Your Constitution score is 19 while you wear this amulet. Wow. Now Manix really does want to trade. Although I think the personality-wise, it fits Gillian's better. But can you imagine Manix suddenly getting a 19 con? I think he literally has like a 10. Actually, I don't think Gillian's is probably about a 14, if I recall. Yeah, she's got a 14. So a 19 would give you another it's a +4. So you'll get +2 hit points per level. So that would be 18 hit points for Gillian, which is huge. Manix has an 11 con. Holy shit. If Manix had his hands on that Amulet of Health, he would get 4 times 9, 36 new spanking new hit points. My goodness. He would go from a wet paper bag to a, still in the low end of adventurers, but a lot hardier. That actually put him above Gillian. Wow. That would be big. That's going to be fun when the players... I mean, the item is bigger than the Trickster God at that point. And some of the Trickster Gods are really impressive, too. They give you those huge, ridiculous stat bumps. That's cool. That'll be a good reward. And I like that the Tomb does sprinkle in really good rewards. It's not just a bunch of fuck you, like, mean-spirited rooms that are just bullshit. Like, they really are. There's some nice rewards in there, and I think the players realize that. But I'm thinking this... Oh, and then the Skeleton Key, they'll see it, and it's going to, like, dive into a cauldron, and that'll basically make the players want to trigger the trap, because as soon as they come over here and basically start fucking with the cauldron and try to grab that key out, that will then trigger the trap to have all these skeletons pour out. So that's what I was going to use the Skeleton Key for in here. Interestingly enough, there are the zombie door the players ignored, which is a whole thing that they're going to miss on the other side, because they never did go to the south. But it's a weird thing where they're like attached to a pulley. They've got like a horse bridle in their mouth. And to where if they move away from the door, that opens the door. But it never explains, like, are they chained? Like, how far are they chained, or how this works? There's not really good rules for that. So I don't know, like, how far these zombies can make it, or how exactly that works with these zombies being kind of chained to a part of the door. Maybe they're chained to, like, the corners, kind of like maybe above the ceiling where this wall meets. So give them, let's see, is this 15 feet? Oh, is that not a full? Yeah, that's a square there, right? So maybe they can go 15 feet from that. So they're kind of chained up, but it's not going to impede them, but it will give them only a certain distance they can go. We'll try. Yeah, they will open the door, which is interesting. But that doesn't really... In other words, it's just weird for the players to get there from this direction, because they'll just see that door open, but nothing actually... there's no consequence of that. Whereas from the other side, they have to try to... It's kind of a mini puzzle, though it's also dumb, because you can just kill the zombies and open the door yourself. I guess you can brute force through any puzzle, but it's something I'm having to think of now, because the players are coming to it from this side. I guess we can actually put them on the token layer. There's also a weirdness, the fact that there's supposed to be 3 zombies here, but there's obviously only 2 squares. That immediately breaks the rules for being able to fit people in different sides. So I guess I'm going to have to do it like this, awkwardly. I'm definitely not going to roll hit points for the skeletons, but just for funsies, I'll roll them for the zombies. But yeah, they'll see... Maybe they can tell that the zombies have a certain reach and they can just avoid them, which would be pretty fun. That is definitely a Walking Dead situation. 3d8 plus 9. We need 3 zombies, please. All right, that's hardly worth changing. 23. Wow, they did a big Roll20 update, didn't they? Does anybody know anything about this? They changed my jukebox thing, and now it looks like there's a dynamic lighting section for tokens. Somebody hasn't been on Roll20 all week. Oh boy, this is all new. Gives the ability to see if there is light or if night vision is enabled. Tokens with vision can see to the edge of the available light. Night vision, give this token the ability to see without any light. Token emits light. Okay, so if you check that, does that then... Okay, it does. So they just made this more intuitive, I guess, with little on-off switches instead of a checkbox. Enable to set distance. Okay, that's kind of cool. Makes the token emit low light in addition to any bright light set above. So here's the question. Did that work for all of my previous setups? Did that translate correctly? So for somebody like Gillian, who currently has the bagpipes on, I think, it did not. So her tokens are off. Oh no. Did it turn off everybody's lighting? Oh crap. I have to redo all this? Is there a light in this room naturally? Where's that light coming from? There's light somewhere in this room. Can't see it though. Where? It looks like there's light coming from the sarcophagus. It's not on the dynamic layer, is it? Nope. On the GM layer? Nope. What is going on? I changed all the... Okay, there's light coming from up here. So is she still giving off the light? She's got to still be giving off light. Look at that. Yeah, it's Gillian. Oh, it's still here. Okay. Never mind. The emit light is still there. So how does that work if it still has the old one and the new one? Token vision. I mean, I assume has sight is the same as enabling token vision. And then emitting light is the same as these. So it just has both of them right now? It's kind of confusing. Maybe you can choose either one. All right, well, I don't want any to change anything. I also meant to change all of their hit point bars to the bottom. That's a change I was hoping to make. Bottom overlapping, because I think that's ultimately going to do better. We should have been doing this since the beginning. I did not make that the default token, though, so I'm going to change that every time if I forget. Bottom overlapping. I think they fully implemented the dynamic line. Okay. So it's a work in progress. There we go. And that helps keep the hit points kind of out of everybody's way. Block each other. I won't worry about that for NPCs, though, but just for the players' sake. What I do hate is having the nameplates on, though. That's always annoying, because that does block me. Really don't need nameplates on game. All right, so the zombies are just pressed up against here to begin with. I guess we can put it. Nope. Can you not hold Alt and move it? There we go. But I'm going to have to break them up into multiple tokens. So I don't think I'll let them go past, like, let's see. Oh, there we go. We can use the pillars. So basically, once they reach the pillars, they've gone as far as they can go from these sides. I'll let them reach, like, any square attached to a pillar is as far as they can get, and they can't go beyond the thing. So if the players realize that, they're hooked onto it, and yes, that door will open as soon as the zombies move. But It's going to be weird if the players just avoid them, and then if they just want to like range attack them and kill them, I'd probably just hand wave that and not put them in combat, because zombies have no, ranged attacks and no tactics, no mind, so they would just get destroyed, and that's perfectly fine. What token pack did you get for the statues? I did not. I just straight up got that from the free assets. Literally just searched like statue. I think I've used a couple of these. They only have a few, but it's better than the default, which is just showing like a pedestal circle with a star in it. I don't know. The art is really good throughout all of the tomb, and then for whatever reason, for statues specifically, they use this weird like star art. They just didn't want to make any statues, so that's where I come in. And right now, there's no way they're going to miss this secret door. So the path to level 3 is down these stairs, but because the rules, what's stopping the players from going straight down to the bottom? Nothing. Nothing is stopping the players from doing that, other than their own proclivity from searching every room. But yeah, I have to prep all of these things. It's a grand staircase in the middle. They can go straight to... Hell, at level 1, they could have jumped down that waterfall and ended up at level 5 and fought that aboleth. And everything just... It's me just throwing my hands in the air and throwing papers everywhere and going, oh shit, we're doing this now. So yeah, this dungeon is... it's really cool, but it's a nightmare for DM design in a lot of ways. But because the rules we have for passive perception are that if you are within 5 feet of a secret door, and our dearest observationist, Mr. Mannix, shoutouts to over 20 people watching this behind the scenes stream, by the way. He's got a passive perception of 20, which is also kind of a nightmare for a DM with a tomb that's supposed to surprise people. But that is how he built his character. He's got Dungeon Delver, he's got super high intelligence and all that. So he spent his build doing that. And I went to reward him. So he still has to roll perception checks to see things, in a room or something, but his passive perception always works within like a melee range around him. So because this corner is literally right next to the stairs down, there is no way they're going to miss this secret door. Now, they could choose not to go in here for sure, but there's an excellent chance that we are going to be dealing with Withers next session. I guess it depends on how long that Pappas O'Toole combat encounter lasts. This is kind of an interesting little pool here. This is number where are we at? 25, which is the scrying pool. So this is one of those classic wizard pools of water they can use to magic mirror and see out into different areas, but specifically it lets Withers apparently look out of the eyes of any of the tomb guardians that are just kind of walking around, I guess, the dungeon, which I didn't think there were that many walking around, but I guess there's as many as I need them to be. And you can look into it, so I'm going to have to come up with one if the players want to use. I don't think there's a check for it, right? They could just instantly use it. Yeah, it says pick a random level or roll a d6, describe the guardian's path through it. So that'd be a cool way for me to tease a future level of the dungeon, which I definitely will. That could be interesting. But if you're not wearing Withers' amulet, then the tomb guardian becomes aware. And this is where things get fucked up and kind of horror movie-like, where somehow the scrying pool explodes and that tomb guardian fucking like the ring pulls itself out of the pool and attacks the players, which is fucking crazy and scary and shocking, that this thing that you were looking out of the eyes of, or you know what, even, would be even more horrific is if instead, if you were looking out of its eyes, if you somehow had like a video game, like third-person camera behind it, that would make less sense for the scrying pool, but it would be more awesome if suddenly the tomb guardian just turned around and stared at the camera, and then the pool explodes and this thing just emerges out of here. And the tomb guardians, oh god, pull a player another person. That would be fucking crazy, Arno. Immediately split the party up into dire situations. It doesn't say anything about how this works, about if the scrying pool has any kind of teleportation. None of that. It just mentions there's a specific like effect where if it's anybody but Withers staring into this thing, the Tomb Guardian pops out. A Tomb Guardian is a flesh golem, but with like plate mail, basically, which makes it a pretty good creature to use. Obviously, very easy creature. It's just got its basic slam attacks, but it's got a +7 to hit. It can do it twice with an average of 13 damage. It's got an average of just under 100 hit points, and the armor gives it an AC of 17 with a bunch of different immunities that I'm going to have to remember. It cannot be frightened or paralyzed or charmed. It's immune to lightning and poison, and immune to basically every non-magical weapon attack, although, as I mentioned, I believe most of my players now have magical weapons. In fact, it absorbs lightning, which is kind of nifty, and it does take more damage. I don't think the Berserk is really going to come up with there's only one of them around. It doesn't really help me. It does have magic resistance, so that's good to know. So just kind of a really fucking shocking moment that this thing can pop out of, which I'm really looking forward to. And a very tight quarters as well. Players can't really maneuver not too well. We need to roll hit points for this guy, though, don't we? Mr. Tomb Guardian. I don't know why all creatures have to emit light. Go ahead and let players see the name. What crap, I got rid of your character sheet. What is your hit points? Really cool art for that thing, too. That thing's awesome looking. It's like sewn together from Dead Adventures in the Tomb, which is cool. Let's see. You are 11 D8 plus 44. Show me 100 hit points. Oh, 91, a little below average. Oh, well. Oh, well, that'll be a fun lead up, softening them up before the probably fight with Withers. And this gets really fucking crazy here. So they can see another secret door leading further in, which this is not an automatic. Again, if somebody steps within 5 feet of it, then they can see it, or they can search through them or whatever else. They'll see this door, and then they get to a spiral staircase that literally runs the gamut between levels 2, which they're on now, all the way down to level 5. Ooh, yeah, an arcane eye floating behind the guardian. That's kind of cool. It still doesn't make sense about why the creature can like teleport back out of the thing, but yeah, I like that idea. Have it like floating. I mean, I don't have to explain it. I don't have to even know what's going on here. It's all just magic. But they can immediately get to the staircase that this is nightmare inducing for a DM that lets them travel between 3 different levels of the tomb. Also, doors that lead up to the workshop, which, fun fact, the players have seen before, but they decided to nope and run back out, which is why, as you can see, I've already rolled hit points for all of these dwarves in here, which have tomb dwarves building traps. Which another reason I didn't necessarily want to ambush them, because they haven't even fought the tomb dwarves yet. So maybe after they do this fight, and assuming they fight with Withers, that would make a good chance for Withers to escape and then ambush them later on during a long rest. And they've got Withers' office here, which I did throw in some Tomb Guardians here. Basically, I didn't actually roll for them, by the way. I just copied them from the other guy so I can roll. Let's roll 2 more Tomb Guardians. There's my big beefy boy. My big beefy boy, 106. Some Tomb Guardians been eating their Wheaties. 106, indeed, sir. Who's my big boy? All right, 93 is, I think, just about average. But I threw some Tomb Guardians in there, basically because, and here's the other fun thing, if they already fight one and they know what they're capable of, they walk into Withers' office and immediately see these things flanking the doorway. And so they know, okay, if we get into a fight here, it's going to be, there's going to be some shit going on. I love these little crawling, they're such bullshit little creatures, but they're more just for like role-playing purposes. This is a really fun scene I've got concocted where the players can totally just chat with Withers, and he will be excited to chat with them. And he's even going to turn it into one of those like interrogation scenes about, okay, you made it here. You've done pretty good work so far. You get to ask me 3 questions, and I'll ask you 3 questions. He'll say this to whoever wants to talk to him or the party in general. And I don't really have it planned in terms of, because I can't. I don't know what the fuck the players are going to ask him. but he is willing to divulge basically everything that they want to know, with the caveat that it's going to be pretty short answers. But he has no reason to lie to the players. Like, he really doesn't. And obviously, Mannix is also extremely built for like insight roles. But I plan on being generally pretty truthful about whatever they want to ask. They can ask about what the keys entail, how many levels are the tombs, any one particular. The interesting thing is they don't know the specifics of any of the areas. So they wouldn't necessarily be able to ask him like for solutions to any puzzles, I don't think, because they haven't gone, deeper down. And this will be their one chance for this scene, by the way. If they ever try to go talk to Withers again, I'm going to do an idea that I read from somebody else's recaps that his like entire office is moved somewhere else because he can move the dungeon around as he wants. So he's just office is not there anymore, and probably the workshop not either. He's probably just going to move all that shit and just make it so the players can't like just go back and basically chat with him whenever they feel like it. I don't want to make that a thing at all, but this will be their one chance to have a really cool role-playing scene. And at the end of those 3 questions, and the ones that I've got for him to ask are like, because apparently he's excited about, learning about the surface world and like what effects the death curse has on people, and basically just a chance for the players to role play a little bit. The 3rd question is going to be really fun. It's going to be him leaning forward in his chair and saying like, so what part of the tomb did you like the best? Because he's basically getting like customer feedback from them in terms of like, a survey, like 1 through 5. How did you feel about this room? So I plan on having a lot of fun with that. Hopefully the players engage, and they can get out of it without a combat encounter as long as they follow those rules. They ask the 3 questions, and they have that little scene, and then they leave. And if they leave, it's fine. He'll just let them leave and go about their business because he wants them to go into the dungeon. If they do fight Withers, though, and try to ambush him in any way, depending on the player action, like I'm going to do everything in my power for Withers to escape from this fight without necessarily just straight up cheating, because he has the ability, I believe his amulet allows him to just escape. It's basically like a DM tool to just get the fuck out of somewhere. Is that actually on him? I think it's... Okay, maybe it's the amulet I have to look up. It's that amulet that he wears that gives him special powers to, I believe, get around the tomb unimpeded. You can use an action to spend 1 to teleport yourself and anything you're wearing or carrying to a location within 100 feet of you. Doesn't have to be in line of sight, must be familiar to you. So basically like a dimension door that works within the Tomb of the 9 Gods. So as long as he has an action, he can escape from any situation, which is big. Now, we do know that my players are very capable of killing things very quickly, and unfortunately, Withers does not have a whole lot of hit points, so I would have to... He's only got the white stat block. Or, is it a white? Yeah, I think it's a white. It's the same as the Tomb Dwarves, isn't it? It's a white, but he's got, like, spells. Does he even have shield? I would have to give him shield. I mean, come on, no fucking wizard doesn't have shield. Which would give him an AC of... With shield, it would give him an AC of 19. And I don't think he would be able to be surprised if he's in the middle of this role play. I'm trying to figure out if there's ways for... I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some ways the players will try to just kill him straight up. Depending on what they do, I could let them do that. But I'm going to try to do everything I can, if they really are insistent on fighting him, to have him escape from the battle, including it may be a case where literally all he does is use his first action to escape. Even though I would love to sit there and have him, cast down some spells. I mean, I could rule that his amulet doesn't require an action, so he could still cast like a wall of fire, maybe in the hallway, and then escape to where anybody who tries to, once they leave this area, or just have the hallway stretch to this, I don't know, something. We'll have to see how I'm feeling and how well the players are doing. I can gauge how deadly I want Withers to be in this fight, or maybe they'll be able to defeat him. I don't know, but I did put the Tomb Guardians in here to make it more of a deterrent than anything else. Now that the players know how strong they are, deter them away from doing this fight. Because otherwise, if it was literally just Withers and a bunch of these stupid fucking clawed hands, which really do nothing in combat, I don't think the players would hesitate at taking him down. But because they had these added threats in here, now they really have to decide if it's worth doing. And he'll escape anyway, magically, hopefully. And then they'll still have to deal with the Tomb Guardians and get a lot weaker from there. So then it gets pretty stressful for me to plan. So I'm hoping at this point, again, Pappas O'Toole's tomb, the genie, prepping for tomorrow. I assume we are going west of here, going through the secret door. We've got the genie, which should not be a fight. It should just be a role-playing scene and basically an acquisition of an ally. Then we've got Pappas O'Toole's tomb, which should be a combat encounter, but the severity and length of the combat encounter will depend on how well the players solve the puzzle in here. And then they'll see the secret door. They can choose to go in or not. I would assume they would. The scrying pool is more than likely, although, the last time they found a pool of water and they drank from it, it did not go well, so maybe they'll ignore it. If they ignore it, that won't be a combat encounter. They can find the other secret door, and then they can find the workshop and the office and the staircase. And this gets really crazy to prep because I'm hoping they do the workshop and Withers because that's the stuff I've got prepped the best. If they immediately start going down these stairs, then we have to start worrying about level 3, which obviously it's almost 90 minutes through Scrying and Annihilation, and I have not talked about level 3 yet. Level 3 is when things start getting really themed, and in this theme, it is a beholder's lair. And all of the walls are like this alien fungus with eye stalks that pop out and can shoot the players, which I think is really fun. The stairs lead down to a pair of tomb guardians with a chain linked to them that I believe they share hit points, so you can't just focus one down, which is a really interesting additional hazard to put on the players. This is the hieroglyphic floor room tomb, the classic kind of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where you've got the tiles you have to step on, which is really fun. Dead body, of course, always deters the players. They saw this room from level 2, but now they'll be able to see that plaque and hopefully get a better clue about how to get to it. But you can't actually get to it for a while. You can see through it and lets you see the past, which is really fun. But you can't actually get to it unless you go all the way down and to the right. I'm actually going to zoom out a little bit so you can see this full level. This level is really fun because it's got its own mini-boss with the Beholder, and in order to access its door, you have to find 10 keys hidden throughout this level specifically. And of course, the way I can force the players to do that is by putting the skeleton key that they ultimately need inside the Beholder's lair. It doesn't really make much sense that the skeleton key would have made it in there, but who knows how they get around. And the Beholder's lair does, I think, have good treasure in there. I would hope so. That's going to be an amazing encounter, though, I hope. It looks like from all the different, people's recaps and things that I've read of how they deal with the, of how they've dealt with the Tomb of the Nine Gods and the path they've taken, the Beholder has always been like a marquee standout fight in all of them. And it's a good halfway point in the tomb. So I'm looking forward to kind of forcing the players to do that one by having them collect all these different keys that they need just to get in there. But to start, I'll probably look at prepping, like I said, this Tomb Guardian fight. 42 is another tomb. Is this the one where you have to recreate the ceremony? I think it's a pretty easy one, honestly. Kubazan. Yeah, you'd have to perform a ritual that's basically depicted on these murals. And if you do that perfectly fine, then nothing bad happens. It's kind of one of the easier tombs in here. 43 is like a horror movie. You go through all these different curtains that depict more depravity of this dinner scene until finally you get to this severed boar's head that you have to stick your head in if you fail all these wisdom saves. And it's really a fuck you room. There's no treasure or anything. It's just straight bad. So I would expect a lot of players would turn around and nope out of it. But who knows? Maybe they're curious. Or, this is the other crazy thing, they take the spiral staircase down, in which case they make it to the back of the drum room and find a Tomb Guardian there. So it's immediately going to be a fight. But that fight basically turns off this room, with the caveat that Withers would probably replace him, and I believe that's actually mentioned in the text somewhere, would probably replace that Tomb Guardian at some point. I don't know how long it would take, but if they end up taking a long time, especially a long rest between doing that and going this way, then Withers would probably replace that Tomb Guardian, but it ends up to a crawl space that ultimately has them lead back into where they need to go, although there is a funny golden skull here they can grab, which literally just follows and irritates a person forever, and it's disadvantage, and it's all kinds of bad. So this one's not as bad, although they can keep... The thing is, these stairs go all the way down to level 5, so you've got an instant access, although you already had access with this staircase also. So again, you're just hoping the players want to engage with all the levels. They realize there's a lot of good treasure to be found. The Trickster Gods are really good. But as the players have already gotten most of the Trickster Gods' possessions, it'll be interesting to see if they still want to keep going for more, knowing that they can only have one. I guess they don't know they can only have one, but they'll figure that out pretty quickly. Because after, I assume, Gillian gets Pappas O'Toole's, all 5 of my players will have Trickster Gods at that point. So how much are they willing to grab more of those, knowing that those items and the magical abilities are mutually exclusive to each other. So you can't just hoard all of these things. They really are like one for each. Although I think they're all pretty good, and some of them are better than others, and some players might want some more than others. And you always, how can you resist even without knowing what it's going to be? Like, well, mine is okay, but this one could be better. Show me what's behind door number 4, please. So I'm hoping they do engage with all the different tombs, and there are certainly more to be had. But yeah, level 3 is going to be pretty nuts. Got a lot of cool shit going on. I'll probably, I'm trying to discuss things, again, assuming the players do kind of a room by room basis is how I'm trying to prep, with the caveat that, okay, if they do go down this staircase, I need to have at least like this room and this room also at least aware of what's going down there. And so far we're looking at doing about 2 sessions a level based on the rate we've gone so far. And we've had pretty long sessions for us, which is about anything over 3 hours is a very long session for us. And I don't know if some of these would take longer or not, but we're looking at probably a minimum 9 sessions left in our campaign, in case you all were wondering about that. So, and I do probably have us ending with the Tomb of Annihilation and just having all of the things that happened with our Tomb of the Nine Gods, and having any of the stuff that happened after, like with Artis, Zendala, and all that, be kind of a epilogue sequence. And some of it might be like, hey, your villain is still out there. Do you spend, what does your character do now that this immediacy is solved, but you've got other personal threats, or maybe your personal threat is solved, and now what do you do from here? So probably more of an epilogue thing. So I haven't discussed what we're doing next in our ongoing live streams, but we will be ending the Tomb of Annihilation campaign at the end of Tomb of the Nine Gods. I just don't know when that's going to be, because, as I mentioned, it could be 9 sessions, I think, minimum. It could be another 10, 11, 12 sessions. I don't know. It's going to be hard to say, but it depends on really how much combat we have and how much room-to-room action we have. All right. I think that will do it for this week's Crafting Annihilation. Thank you all for joining me. I'll be back streaming a Let's Play game tomorrow. Patrons, we have the DM Roundtable recording tonight. Please RSVP for that if you haven't already, either on the Patreon page or via the Discord channel. Look forward to discussing our topic with you all, and I will see you tomorrow for our Tomb of Annihilation session.